Hey everyone, welcome to a video tutorial on how to use the new RotoWire Golf Lineup Optimizer. To get to the optimizer from the RotoWire homepage, scroll up to Daily Fantasy Sports and select PGA DFS. From here, we'll need to scroll up to Lineup Optimizer, and for the sake of this video, we're going to use the DraftKings Optimizer. If you'd like to use a different DFS site, at the top here, you can click on DraftKings and you can choose from the FanDuel or Yahoo lineup optimizers. Before we get into any customizations or building lineups, let's take a look at the slate and the player pool. For the sake of this video, we're going to use this week's tournament as an example, which is the RSM Classic. We can also change the slate as well. So if you want to view the round one showdown slate, you can click here for that. You can also scroll to different dates, and here for tomorrow you could look at the round two showdown slate. Okay, so here we're going to look at the player pool. So here we have all of our projections for this week's tournament. Let's start by looking at each column. Here we can see each player, and these are currently sorted by most fantasy points. Here we have the lock button. You can click on the lock button for a certain player to guarantee that that player is in every one of the lineups that you optimize. Here you can exclude a player by clicking the red X. That'll make sure that that player is never in a generated lineup. You can also click the like button on a player. That's going to boost that player's projected fantasy point total by 10%. Here you can see each player's cuts made for the season. So, for example, you can see that Russell Henley has made 17 out of 23 cuts. And then it just has their cut percentage here. You can also click on this column to sort by that. Here we have how many top threes that player's had for the current season, as well as top tens. We have the salary for the selected DFS site. We have the projected fantasy point total. We have each player's value, which is just their fantasy points per $1,000 in salary. Here we have minimum and maximum exposures. So you can adjust these if, for example, you want to make sure that you have Russell Henley in at least 20% of your lineups. You can enter that there. And then if you, only want Russell Henley in no more than, say, 40% of your lineups, you can adjust that there. And then the last column here is each player's projected roster percentage. So, for example, we estimate that Russell Henley will be in 22% of GPP lineups. Another thing we have here is the edit button. So this has additional data that you can click on to show up in the player pool. So, for example, if you want, if you feel that greens in regulation is an important stat, you can click on that. We can click done, and now we'll see each player's green in regulation percentage for the season. And then you could sort by that. So we're just going to go back and click off that, go back to how we had it. Another thing you'll see here in the optimizer is we have stars next to certain players. That signals that that player is a RotoWire top play. It's somebody that we recommend for the week. We like them to have a good tournament. We like their value. For example, this is currently Thursday, round one of the RSM Classic. Eric Cole is currently the first round leader. You can click on the star there, and it has a write-up about why we like Cole. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at the player pool, let's take a look at the different customizations that we can make. So here we have a few default customizations. We have our our RotoWire projections here as the projection source. You can also edit that to custom projections of your own. Here we have minimum projected fantasy points. So you can adjust this if you want to make sure that you don't have anybody, say, below like 50 projected fantasy points. You could edit that here. And then here, projection variance factor, a randomness factor, if you will. We have this set at 5%. This is to, one, get you some different projections from other RotoWire subscribers so that you're all not just using the same lineups in case you don't make any customizations. So, for example, if somebody's projected for 100 fantasy points, this 5% is going to randomly project that player between 95 and 105 fantasy points. But you can edit that to 0 or as high as you want. Now we'll take a look at some of the other customizations that we have in here. Again, for golf, it's not as in depth as some of the other sports like NFL, where you are going to want to use like some stacking. But we do have some things in here like groups. So if you want Eric Cole and Russell Henley in your lineups, you could enter that here. So you could play around with some different combinations there. You could exclude certain players here if you don't want I don't know, like Cameron Young in your lineup. You could click on him to exclude him. Just add him back for now. We can also look at just max global exposures. So if you're doing a lot of lineups, you're max entering, 150 lineups, and you don't want more than, say, like 40% of any one player, you could add that in here. Max total rostership, if you want to be unique, you could set this up here to a certain amount. Generally for golf, we try not to go more than roughly 80%. So you could do that here. It's definitely important, especially in GPPs, to be unique, to not take all the chalky players. We'll just set it at 70 here. We'll add that in. And then you can also do, minimum, maximum salary. Not as important for golf, but if you want to make sure you're using pretty much all of your salary, which is generally recommended in PGA contests, we'll just set this at, say, 49,800. And now it's time to just go back and create some lineups. Let's just do 150 just to kind of see what we get back based on the customizations that we created. One of the things you'll see here is that the optimization process is really quick. We got 150 lineups back in a couple of seconds there. So you can see here all of our lineups. So you can scroll over, and we have this sorted by most fantasy points. And then you can also see the total roster percentage. Note that we put that customization in place not to have more than 70% total rostership. So you can see that here we don't have all of those came back under 70%. So that's good. Exposure reports. Here, this is going to break down how much exposure we have of each player. Another customization that you can see we set was that 40% max global exposure. So you can see nobody came back more than 40%. That's good. That's what we like. So that's great. Another thing here is you can customize the lineups view. So you can add other things in here. One thing I like to add in is if somebody's a RotoWire top play. So we'll click on that. We'll add done. And then you can see on your lineups which guys are RotoWire top plays. So you can see, okay, Russell Henley, we liked. Eric Cole, we liked. And it's not to say we don't like, Brendan Todd or whatnot. We just, we can't, we got to cut the top plays off somewhere so you can see, which lineups maybe have a few guys. And then another thing we can do here is we can download these lineups to our CSV, and then we can import that into DraftKings. So it's really a big time saver here. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for everything with the PGA lineup optimizer. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I can be reached at Ryan Poole, Pohle. And we can also be contacted at support@rotowire.com for any other questions, concerns about the golf lineup optimizer. Thank you.